ושעמדה לאבותינו ולנו שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו הוא עמד עלינו לכלותנו ושעמדה לאבותינו ושעמדה לאבותינו ולנו שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו הוא עומד עלינו לכלותנו.
This is David Lichtenstein, and welcome to the Yeshiva Shalmaila. This week's program is going to be about Pesach, and I don't know if you remember last year after Pesach, we had on an entire debate, and it got maybe 50,000 views. Is the beer in the New York tri-state area, because for many years there was no shtar mechira. And we had Rabbi Kalman Weinfeld from the OK set over her story, how he tried to get a shtar mechira. We had on the OU and the OK that disputed the shtar mechira. So this year, the shtar mechira is done right. I guess Mr. Simon Bergson heard the interview. He was very inspired. So we have an interview with Rabbi Kalman Weinfeld and Mr. Simon Bergson, who this year he said he's going to sell his beer distributorship with Allah Hidurim. It's going to be a very interesting interview. We're going to be speaking about quinoa. Can you eat quinoa on Pesach? We're going to have Rabbi Eli Gerstien. He's the head of the OU Rabbinic Committee. He's going to speak about quinoa on Pesach. We're going to have from Rabbi Nissan Kaplan from the Morah Yeshiva. He's going to be speaking about going to hotels, the hashkafa of going to hotels. We'll have Rabbi Nesanel, Sommer, an Eidim of Rabbi Kalman, a Pesach hotel, Rav Hamachshirwith, a Dayan. He's going to be speaking about possible issues of halacha and hashkafa of going to hotels. And then we're going to have the OU Rabbinic coordinator, Rabbi Juravel, what to look for in a Pesach hotel, who can you trust, and a few signs that if you see them, you say, uh-oh, I don't think this hechsher is really cutting it. That's going to be the topic of this week's program. Okay, so before we start, I want to say over a vart. Is matzah l'shem avdus or l'shem cheirus? And if you look in the poskim, they say it's really l'shem both. Matzah zu al shem shenigalu, and on the other hand, it's called lechem oini. So the Morah discusses it already. So here's the question: how could matzah represent both? You're either pro oini or anti oini. So let me propose a vart. And the vart goes like as follows. You know, we all start out as people, as humans, as flour and water. Everything starts out like flour and water. What happens in a bakery? They take flour and water, and maybe they add in sugar or chocolate. It could become a brownie. It could become a brioche. It could become egg challah, a water challah, a bagel. It has minayam, right? It's rachik minayam. The different options for what it could be, and at some point it becomes something, some baked confection or bread, a French bread. At which point it's formed itself. We too, as humans, we start out young, and we have dreams. We look at the world. We say, "Here's something that we can fix. Here's a goal that I'm going to have. This is the type of house I'm going to shtalavek. The shidduch I'm going to make, the business, the family, how I'm going to learn." And many of us are successful. Most people on some level are successful, and they form and they rise and they become that, but or partial of what they want it to be. But here's something interesting. Here's the difference between flour and water in a human. In flour and water, let's say you made a bagel and you said, you know what, I decide I want a bagel, I want an apple pie. You can't take the bagel, grind it back down to what it is, what if you dried it and ground it back down, it can't become an apple pie anymore because it lost its flour and water form. A ground down brownie, a babka, etc., doesn't become flour anymore. That's what happens. It bakes, it changes chemically. The chiddush of matzah is that every year when we eat matzah, we have the option, the Morah says, to go back to cheirus. What does it mean? back to simplicity. You know what? Let's hit the reset button. Make believe, not make believe, accept where I am today, whatever form it could be, and it could be the most wonderful thing. But I don't want to be set, because that means I can't grow anymore. The Gemara in Bava Metzia says Reb Zera, I think it was Reb Zera, fasted for 40 days when he went from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael to forget the Torah that he learned in Bavel, so he could learn Torah in Eretz Yisrael without prejudice, without prior svaris, maskanis, hagdamis, etc. Pesach, we get the ability to go back to the beginning, back to flour and water. We could be matir asurim. If it wasn't good, we could be matir asurim. We could untie the ropes. But even if it was good, we could undo titles, accomplishments, anything that says, I am this brioche, whatever it be, strudel. It's true, that's what I was. But I could do so much more. Do you know that there's something called ageism? Ageism is something you have certainly in the workplace, where they'll say, you're an accountant, to give a label. I'm an accountant, I went to school, I became this. I'm an investment banker, I'm a broker, name what you are. And what ageism means is that, and when you reach a certain age, like it could be 40, in tech it could be 35, could be 50, they say, this is who you are. We don't think you could grow anymore. Like, you're an old accountant. You're an old nursing home operator. That's the way they did it. Ageism means we assign a title to you, mostly based upon being in a fixed direction for X number of time, and say, your youth is gone. You can't change anymore. But here's something interesting. The first Yid, Avram Avinu, he had a matbeya. What does it mean it was a matbeya? When somebody says, this is your currency, a lawyer's currency is in books, a lamdin is in lumdis. Currency means this is, what did he transact, and what does the Gemara say? Gimel yatzem manitim bailam. What was the currency of Avram? Zakenus keina mitzad echad, bacher upsula mitzad sheni. Avram maintained his youth forever. Avram remained young. And it's not only Avram. Look at our leaders. The Torah Shabbat Peh was Rabbi Akiva. When did he start, Rabbi Akiva, when did he start learning? At 40 years old. 40 years means he was halfway to retirement already. He was fixed. He knew it was an ignoramus. He was an amoritz. And what did Rabbi Akiva say? Hinar Yisrael v'yaveyu. A Yid every year Pesach could elect, I am flour and water again. Moshe Rabbeinu. What does it say on Moshe Rabbeinu? Right before he died, Leinos Lechai, his cheeks, the plump cheeks that a child has. You say, I'm going to give you a knip off the back, I'm going to pinch his cheek. The rosy. Moshe Rabbeinu had the rosy cheeks of a child. Leikasa Einai, the twinkle. Who has a twinkle? A child has a twinkle. A young man. The young man packed his bags. He began his journey. He has a twinkle, a gleam in his eye. When you're older, it's not associated with the gleam. What does it say about Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Re'em Mehemna? He never lost that twinkle. And what did Nadav and Avihu say? They didn't get that. They said, Masaya Musu has Kainim Elu. They looked at their age and they didn't realize you're as old as you want to be. They looked at their age as a physical constraint. The message of the matzah is that you're as young as you want to be, and we always have the ability. You have 15-year-olds who are stuck in a rut, and you have Moshe Rabbeinu, when he stood in front of Pari the first time, was 79 years old, and you have 79-year-olds that have twinkles in their eyes and rosy cheeks. I heard from Rabbi Moshe Shapiro, he said, one of the lashonos of curse is ekoiv, mo ekoiv lekavakel. Bilam Harasha said, why does ekoiv mean a curse? Oror means to diminish the oyer, make a smaller oyer, a smaller light. What's ekoiv? So Ramosha said, Yaakov Avinu said to Lavan, who was always changing his mind, he was the biggest Polish Drake-up imaginable. Yaakov said, let's make an exact, write down, label, what is my going to be? Let's denominate now exactly what my payment is going to be. Let's set it in stone. This is what I want with a Drake-up. Moshe said, you know what? That's good. You could do that on negotiation on a price. But when you teach a person and you say, this is what you are, what are you saying? saying, and I can't do like Reb Zeir, I can't start all over again? That's a curse. That's more ekov like kavakel. By the way, Rabbi Akiva, who started learning at 40, he didn't live till 400. He lived till 85, which is very modern. His right? The Avist Reb Nissan says that's when he lived and that's when he died. So I said this Torah, and what did I do? Last week I listened to the shir about Rav Shach and the Isser of obesity. I said, you know what? If Pesach means we could start over again, you know what? I'm going to run this. The office I work in 2 months, they're doing a 5K. I'm going to run a 5K. It doesn't mean you're never too old to get into good shape. You're never in to learn something new. You know what? You could be old. You can't learn technology. I decided I'm getting a chavrusa twice a week. We learn machine learning, convolutional neural networks. I started a few months ago. Why? Because Klal Yisrael believes, Nar Yisrael, we never lose that galeem. We never lose that youth. We always come back to matzah. So on one hand, going back to the original question, matzah is lechamayni. It's nothing. It's just the beginning. If you stop at the beginning, if all you're left with, enechanami azat tamhatis. But if you recognize that going back to the beginning means, and now I can recreate myself in somewhere greater and grander, there's no end. When we eat the matzah this year, let's have kavana. Yesterday was yesterday. Today I'm going to be young. I'm going to aspire to amazing things this year. Let me ask 1 or 2 riddles of the week. We're going to be Mekayim, Shoylim V'Darshim, Shloishim Yom Kaidem HaChag, B'Hilchas HaChag, and we're going to be speaking about Pesach. And by the way, for those of my audience who like riddles, the Beis Yosef brings only a day that says, the Rishonim will hold that only by Pesach do you say Shoylim V'Darshim 30 days before. And the Beis Yosef writes, why? Because there's a lot of halachas for Pesach. Isser, Chametz, V'Hagolas Kelim. So therefore, there's no Shoylim V'Darshim by Sukkot or by Chanukah, just by Pesach. So the Pella is, Rabbi Yonis and Eibshit's question, he says, where do you know the din of Shoylim V'Darshin? It says, Moshe is Oimid B'Pesach Rishon, and he's Mazer al Pesach Sheni. On Pesach Sheni, there's no Isser Chametz or Hagolas Kelim. So how could you learn out that dafka by Pesach? Because Hilchos Meruba, the Mekoyer is from Pesach Sheni, which doesn't have a lot of halachas. The Yad Ephraim writes, Abayis Shehaya B'Cheskas Baduk, you abidek it, and then you found a Chaticha Achas, you have to make a new bracha, and you would have to be baidik the house again. It doesn't say a new bracha. He says you would have to be baidik the house again. So the question is, all over in halacha, what the Shulchan Aruch says, if you're reading the Sefer Torah Shabbos, you find a toyus, right? If you have gimel to usim, it has a cheskes toyus. It becomes a muhsik apostle. But if one time, it doesn't become a muhsik apostle. Same thing by Tiloim. If you find Tiloim 3 times, it becomes Cheskes Tiloim. No, Kalatera Kulati, according to Rabbi, it's 2, but we pass in 3 times. Here, you had a house that's a Cheskes Baduk. You found one thing, you have to be Baidik again. What happens to the Cheskas Badika? That is one riddle we will ask. I have many riddles this week. I'm just picking them at random. Here's a very interesting one. The Gemara in Kedushin says, there's mitzvahs aval ben. A father, certain things he's mechuyev. He's mechuyev l'moiloi. Father's mechuyev to malas ben. L'ftoi semek pidyon ben. L'olam dei Torah. Here's a pella. What does it say on Pesach? V'higadeta lebincha b'yoyim hahu lemar. V'higadeta lebincha. Why isn't v'higadeta lebincha nimna as one of the mitzvahs ha'av al ben? That's our second riddle of the week. At the end of this program, I will believe Neda give us the answer to the riddle of a few weeks ago, which was how was Mordechai allowed to be Masakin all of Klal Yisrael? Let's go to our wonderful guests.
We have on the line with us Mr. Simon Bergson, who's the president and founder of Manhattan Beer Distributors, which is the largest beer distributor in the greater New York area, and Rabbi Kalman Weinfeld. Welcome, Mr. Bergson and Rabbi Weinfeld.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Mr. Bergson, tell us a little bit about yourself. Simon, tell us your story.
So, from the beginning.
Where do you come from? From the beginning. Tell us like a story.
Beginning. Okay, so I was born in a United States government displaced persons camp after World War II. The camp was in Hallein by Salzburg in Austria. My parents had both survived the Auschwitz death camp. My parents actually met in Auschwitz. They were from the same hometown. The hometown is Chechanov, Poland. Chechanov. There were some famous rabbis, famous tzaddik Avraham from Chechanov.
Chechanov tzaddik, right?
Yes.
But he wrote the Rabbi Avram Chechanova wrote the Tzelusa de Avram, right? And I believe he was the uncle of the Strikova Rebbe, right? And he was a contemporary of the Chidushei Rim. He was considered one of the great judicial arbiters of his generation.
Well, apparently you know more about him than I do, so I have to accept what you said.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So anyway, I left Halle by Salzburg when I was 6 months old. We came to America in 1949. My mother fortunately had two uncles who had left Poland in the 20s, and they were here, and they sponsored us to come to America. My mother, unfortunately, lost her entire family in Auschwitz. My father lost most of his family. He had a few siblings that survived because they were in Mexico City. But we came to Brooklyn.
So Simon, let me just slow down a little. If your parents survived Auschwitz, Poland was invaded relatively early. Either they must have escaped the Nazis for a while and been in hiding, or they must have been quite some time in labor camps, right?
Yes, the Nazis invaded Poland September 1st, 1939, and my father was arrested in December of 1939, and my father spent 58 months in concentration camp. He was in Sachsenhausen, Auschwitz, and Mauthausen.
So he
my mother was on the Chechanova transport from 1942 when she went to Auschwitz with all of her family and, like I said, family, friends, neighbors, and all. And she was just fortunate enough to survive. She was, as my father told me years later when I was an adolescent, and I asked why he married my mother because they had very different personalities. He said, I married her because she didn't die from typhus.
Wow.
He had a sense of humor, my father.
Did your parents, did they come from religious homes?
Yes. My grandfather, my father's father, was a chazan, and yes, he was a Hasidic chazan. I have a photo of him, and I have a photo of my great-grandfather, and they look just like Kalman.
Yeah, okay. And your mother came from what type of background?
My mother came from a religious family, but I would say modern Orthodox. My grandfather owned the general store, which was right next to City Hall. So she was somewhat comfortable. She was one of only two Jewish girls in her town that attended the Polish gymnasio. And she used to play the violin, and she would go ice skating, and she had a dienst in the house. And she came from a comfortable background. My father came from a very poor background. He was just a worker, and he was strong, and he was creative. My father had blonde hair and blue eyes, and he spoke many languages, and he spoke a perfect Polish. So he used phony documents initially. His name was Mieczysław Makowski, as opposed to Mordechai Bergson. Makowski was his mother's maiden name, but he was eventually captured, or he turned himself in, because another Jew in town turned him into the Nazis. He was the only Jew in town that was not wearing a yellow Star of David, and he was hanging out with the Polacks. And the Polacks knew him. They knew he was Jewish, but they didn't say anything. It was another Jew who turned him in, hoping that he would get preferential treatment from the Nazis. And obviously, as we all learned, nobody got preferential treatment from the Nazis. So anyway, we came to Brooklyn in 1949. My father got into the shmata business. He made as he would put it, he make a living. He lived America's dream. He bought a house in Brighton Beach. He then ultimately moved in the 60s to North Woodmere, bought a house in North Woodmere, and raised three kids. My sister, by the way, my older sister, was born in Chechanov, Poland. Before my parents went back to Chechanov after the war to see who had survived. And when they found out not many, that's when they decided to come to America.
Wow. So how did you end up from being born in a DP camp to running the largest beer distributorship in the New York area?
Purely by accident, and I'm asked that question on a regular basis, and it has to do with hard work. The harder you work, the luckier you get, being in the right place at the right time, having Hashem look over my shoulder. But the reality is that my father had a friend, an acquaintance from Chechanov, who had come to America in the 30s, and he wound up in the retail beer business, because in Poland, he was the guy that delivered the soda or the Krebswasser and the beer to the people in Poland. And he owned what was called a beverage center here in New York City. And his two sons were accountants by schooling, by trade, but yet they didn't go into the accounting business. They went into this beverage business. And it was a lot of hard labor, laborious work. They wanted out. My father desperately wanted me to come back to New York. I was living in Tucson, Arizona at the time. And he said to me, he has a friend who has a beer business for sale. And I said to him, what's a beer business? And he said, if you want to see it, you'll get in your car, mit deinem Hund, and you'll drive back to New York, and you'll see. And what the beer business turned out to be was a store, a beer store. And it was 7 days a week, an open-door garage that opened up into a small little storefront/warehouse, no air conditioning, no heating, so it was hot in the summer, cold in the winter, but I loved it. And we wound up buying that business, although I said to my father, where are you going to get the money? Because he didn't have any money to buy it. We needed, this is 1975, he needed $50,000 as a down payment, because the rest was leveraged, as they say. It was a leveraged buyout. And my father did not have $50,000. But he did have 10 very good friends, at least 10 good friends. And the first 10 that he went to all loaned him $5,000. And as my father put it, it was a Gemilas Chesed loan. And within 1 year, we paid back every one of those friends $5,000. And I can recall on Sundays having to go to all of their stores, and most of them were on Orchard Street in those days, but some were on 116th Street and some were up in the Bronx, and I had to deliver them some free schoida. But those people all enabled me to get into the business, and then 3 years later, in 1978, I found an opportunity to get into the wholesale end when Rheingold Breweries was closing, and that was the beginning of Manhattan Beer Distributors. And as my father always taught me in business, the key is to make more good decisions than bad decisions. And fortunately, I've made many good decisions, and we are not only the largest in Metro New York, we are the largest single market distributor in America.
Wow.
So
by the way, du verstehst Yiddish?
It was my first language. I spoke Yiddish before I spoke English.
Uh-huh. So tell me about Pesach and beer.
So last year I found, as I came downstairs to the lobby of my building in Manhattan, I saw this rabbi-looking individual, or an individual who looked like it could be a rabbi, and actually, but the doorman had called up and said that there was a friend of mine, Kalman, to see me. And my wife said, I don't think my husband has any friends, Kalman. So we didn't think anything of it. We thought it was the wrong number the wrong room, the wrong apartment that they had. We went downstairs and we saw a man sitting on the couch. And then I was going out to dinner with my wife and my brother and his wife. Apparently the doorman told Rabbi Weinfeld that was Simon Bergson leaving. And he came out and he pursued me in the streets. He said, Shalom Aleichem. And he said, please excuse me, I just want to speak to you. And he started explaining who he was and what he wanted about Pesach and all. And I thought, and I thought that, I didn't know what to think. So what I said to him is, look, if you're serious, come to my office tomorrow and we'll talk. And I thought that was it. I thought I'd never see the man again. And I was wrong, because he showed up at my office the next day at 12 noon. And we started talking about what to do for Pesach, about the importance to the community, about the concerns that my product, my beer, might be chametz, and what to do with it over Pesach. And to tell you the truth, I had been in business for 40 years, and I had never even been concerned about it, nor was I aware of it, because I might be very Jewish, and as I told the rabbi, I'm very Jewish in my heart. I'm not that observant. I observe the holidays that I choose to observe, but I'd never really heard of selling the chametz for the Pesach. The rabbi explained to me the process. He told me what to do and how to do it. He asked me if I'd be willing to do it. I said yes, and here I am doing it the second year now. And the goal is to continue to do it every year for Pesach, so this way the community can deal with my beer and not have to worry about the beer spoiling or having to be thrown away or anything.
So, Simon, let me ask you a metaphorical question, because we can't know the
Sure.
answer. But since Kalman, you say, reminds you a little bit of your grandfather, the Chazan,
Mm-hmm.
do you think your grandfather in heaven is smiling to see that his grandson is selling his chametz on Pesach?
Of course.
Tell them about the grave.
Rabbi Weinfeld went to my parents' grave the other day, and he told them what I've been doing, and he prayed for them, and my parents are looking down upon me and appreciating it also, of course.
So, Simon, let me ask you a question. You know, there are many, we live side by side in communities, secular, religious. Do you think it's unusual to meet somebody like Rabbi Weinfeld, who actually is non-judgmental, he's embracing, he's loving? Is it sort of very different and a breath of fresh air?
Yes, of course. You know, I have a sensitivity, obviously, to anyone who's Jewish. I relate because my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they were Hasidic Jews. My funny story I should tell you that I forgot to mention, my grandfather in 1905 was invited to go to Memphis, Tennessee, because his brother-in-laws, this was my grandmother's brothers, had already migrated to Memphis, Tennessee, and they started a shul, and they needed a chazan. So they sent a letter to my grandfather. They said, come to Memphis, we need a chazan, and then you'll send for your family. So in 1905, he went to Memphis, Tennessee, and he stayed there for 2 years.
Over 100 years ago.
Yeah, he stayed there for 2 years. But then he went back to Poland. Instead of sending for my grandmother, and my father wasn't born yet. My father was born in 1911, but, you know, my grandmother was there with my father's older siblings. Instead of sending for her, he went back because Memphis, Tennessee in 1907, nicht gewengen, nicht kosher. It wasn't kosher enough.
Wow.
And therefore he went back to Poland. So yes, he was a very religious Orthodox Jew.
So this year you're selling your chametz, and what are you going to do with the business on Pesach? How is it going to be run?
I'm selling it to my manager, my senior manager. His name is Edward McBrien. So Ed is my senior manager who runs it all year long. He now is in charge. He will be taking it over. He'll deal with all of the profits. He'll deal with all of the day-to-day operation. I will be going to Miami because I promised Rabbi Weinfeld last year, I promised him that next year, because there was a little controversy last year, so I said to him, okay, next year I will take the whole week off. I will not work on Pesach. So I'm going down to Florida. It gives me an excuse to go hang out on the beach.
And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send some hand-cut, hand-rolled shmura matzah like your grandfather used to eat. Boinede, after we get offline, I'll get an address. We'll send you a few boxes for the Seder.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, it's wonderful speaking. Rabbi Kalman, is there anything you want to add?
Of course. First of all, I want to say that I met Simon. We spoke already last year, so I'm not going to say over everything what I said about the interview last year in your radio show about the kokash cake, about the rabbonim that I got advices from them. This year, I prepared the stories. A few weeks before, I went to Rabbi Weissmandel in Monsey, that he is one of the rabbonim that are advising the OK Kosher and my personal rabbi for many, many areas in my life. And he prepared stories, should be covering all shilas, all anything that can be connected with the union of Mechiras Chometz. And then I went to Rabbi David Feinstein, one of the Poiskei Ador, the son of Zatzal Reb Moshe, and he directed me who to speak to, one of the biggest mumchim for Stores in New York. And we did with all the kinyonim that it's possible to do. We did it in a very, very most halachic way. This is why Rabbi Feinstein wrote in the letter that he gave 2 days ago that Yesh lismoich ala mechiro lechol hadeyos shenasis al pi mumchim besidur mechiras chometz, means you can rely on the mechiras chometz according to all the days. And Rabbi Weissmandel also wrote on the same letter I got from him last night a signature, and he added that this mechire was done according to the halacha bedikduk rav, means very carefully, And if you want to rely on Mechiras Chometz, some people are not relying in general on Mechiras Chometz. They don't do anything with stuff that was sold for Chometz, but the majority of the Jewish communities that are relying on Mechiras Chometz, you can rely, and he add also, even if some people would say that the owner is not a Shomer Shabbos, or whatever you want to call it, this is why might be some fellows in the Mechira, he wrote, Rabbi Weissman, that even according to them, the stores that we have prepared and what we did is good for them also, that everybody can make Sholem Zochers after Pesach. But I want to say one more thing for 2 minutes. Mr. Bergson is very much connected to everything what is about Holocaust survivors. This is why he's involved with the Jewish Holocaust Museum. I want to say a personal story. I am not a Holocaust survivor. My mother was a Holocaust survivor. She passed away 3 months ago. She gave me the recipe for the kokash cake. So let me tell you a story. My father was born in Yerushalayim. My father is the one that writes the Perush Shaila Morah and Chumishton and Velio and many others for him, Shaila Morah, if you heard about him. And my father's father came to Yerushalayim a few years before the Second World War. And the story is that he lived in Sonic, in Galicia. And when he was 20-something, a shadchan called the parents and he says, I have a shidduch for your son, for my Zaidi. And the girl is from Pshemish. It's like an hour with the train from Sonic to Pshemish in Galicia. So he was traveling by himself. He knocked on the door of the girl. They met for 45 minutes and they said, yes, everything looks fine, we can get married. But then he told the girl that his plan, that after the last Sheva Broches, is going to Israel because he wants to live in Israel. He had a desire to go to Israel. He was a Tzanzer Chosid. She says, I am very scared to go to Palestine. This is what she says then. So he says, you are a good girl, you can find another shidduch. I am a good boy, I will find another shidduch. And he went to the train. The younger sister of this girl was listening to the whole conversation. She was running after my Zaidi to the train station and she says this word, Yankel, Oib ichel gain est mich mitnehmen, Yankel, if I will go with you, you're going to take me? He says yes. They spoke for 30 minutes in the train station and they married later. And this is my Bobby, and the older sister got married in Poland, in Galicia, and she was killed with her husband and all children by the Nazis. So you see, Hashem runs the world, you never know, but we need always to do only what we think that can make better the community around us, people, and we can't mix in things that are not going to make good for other people. Sometimes we are making cheshbonos, do this because that, do this because that. Just do, and if you're doing l'shem shomayim, so you can get Reb Shimon Bergson to do Mechiras Chometz, and you can get many other people to do other things, and you can get Mashiach B'Korov Mamesh in Mirz Hashem.
Amen. So thanks to Reb Kalman Weinfeld and Reb Shimon Bergson, the entire Fruma community in the greater New York area, after Pesach, will know that Yoichlu Anavim V'Yispo, the beer was done K'Halacha. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your efforts.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a kosher and a Freilach Pesach.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye. We have with us on the phone Rabbi Eli Gerstien, the rabbinic coordinator of the OU. He was a Talmud of Rav Belsky, a Musmach of Ner Yisrael. Welcome, Rabbi Eli.
Thank you very much.
So, Rabbi Eli, let's talk about quinoa, right? There are 3 reasons why quinoa should be asa. The Archaim in Tafnun Gimel says it's one of the reasons Xeris of Kitnius is Maisa Kedera, right? And I would certainly think that Kitnius is a Maisa Kedera. The second thing he says is that there are places they make, I guess, flour and therefore bread from Kitnius, and you could be Asilach Lufe Bedais, and I would think that quinoa you could make flour from. It certainly feels like it, and make some type of bread-like substance from it. And the third reason is that there are places they grow wheat and they grow kitnius, and sometimes they get mixed up. I don't have a clue whether kitnius fits in, but certainly 2 of these 3. Mm-hmm. So my curious is, I know the OU is makil on quinoa, and I'd like to hear what the logic is to it.
Okay, I just point out first that those same svaras that you mentioned would apply to potatoes as well, and yet, of course, we know that potatoes are not considered to be kidneys. So every rule has exceptions to the rule.
But let me respond to that, okay? The Yachin Ubaya has actually asked that question. He said, why don't they make a gzeira on kidneys, Teferes Yisrael? And he says, if we would make a gzeira on potatoes, it would literally be a hunger here in Europe. It seems that a great staple in Europe was potatoes. Sure. And therefore potato kugel and potato latkes and the potatoes. He said there would be a hunger, and it would be difficult to make that argument about quinoa that people will hunger of Pesach if there was no quinoa.
Right, but it brings out the point that kidneys is a minig, and it depends on what was accepted in the minig. So potatoes, it was a new crop. It came from America. It's a new world crop. It was brought back to Europe, and it became very popular very quickly. And there had to be a decision made. Is it going to be included in kidneys or not? Now, because there was no minig beforehand, it was up to the Rabbanim of that time to decide whether they were going to include it. If it's something that would automatically fit into the definitions stated by you mentioned before, from the Rishonim, then there would be we can't just say, well, there's going to be a hunger. Before the potatoes came to Europe, Yidden survived. They would have survived. They would have figured out what to do. If it would be absolutely usher, they would have had to. But it was something that was up to the decision of the Rabbanim to create, either to decide that it is included or it should not be included in the minig. And therefore they said, look, it's going to be difficulty over here, and we're going to allow it. The famous tshuva from Moshe Feinstein about peanuts, where a similar question was asked to him: Is there a minig of kidneys on peanuts? And he said, that's basically his answer was that it's up to in some places they were noig that it's kidneys, so those places shouldn't eat it. If you do not have a minig, you don't have to accept it as a minig of kidneys, and therefore. Many people ate peanut oil until, I think they say, 50 years ago, that was probably the most common oil that was sold for Pesach was peanut oil. But since then, it sort of evolved that the Hashgacha stopped giving it, and it became less popular. But probably most people come from communities, truth be told, that didn't have a minig of not eating peanuts on Pesach. Of course, you bring it into a house today, you'll get burnt up with the chametz.
So my question to you is, Rabbi Gerstien, does the OU give a hechsher on peanut oil?
Not anymore. No, there was a time when the OU did give a hashgacha on peanut oil, and they stopped. I think I don't know that the OU wouldn't give it so much as I think there isn't any more demand.
Or peanut butter. Let's say for peanut butter, do you give a hechsher on peanut butter for Pesach?
No, the OU doesn't give on
So my question to you is, you're referring obviously to the Igros Moshe or Chaim Chele Gimel Simon Samach Gimel, where Ramoshe's very interesting tshuva, he says what you're saying. He says that, this is not mefurish. There was no kibbutz chachamim who said that came out, but it was a minig that every place, they had certain minim that they didn't because of this gzeira but he says where they didn't make the gzeira, let's say by tapuche adama, by potatoes, he says since they didn't, we don't have it. And therefore he's mata peanuts, but yet the OU is machber on peanuts or on peanut butter, and yet they're mekel on quinoa. Do you see any issue? By the way, Rav Moshe has the most startling. It's really an interesting tshuva. He brings the Beis Yosef, or brings from the Marikra, that calls kidneys a minig shtus. He brings it right, and he also brings from Rabbi Chiel and Shar Gedolim, who never accepted kidneys. So he says kidneys was sort of like half-heartedly accepted by certain parties, and where they accepted it, they accepted what they did. So I just want to ask you, based on that tshuva, you should be giving a hechsher on peanut oil and on peanut butter, which you don't, and on peanuts. But so peanuts you are machmer on, and kidney and
I didn't say that. Again, I didn't say that we're machmer on peanuts. Though you doesn't give, I think. Look, the tshuva from Moshe, speaks volumes about, what the really the permissibility of it. That really it's not a problem, unless it be right. Unless you came from a city that had the minig, he doesn't put the burden of proof on knowing that you didn't have the minig. He says unless you know that you had that you come from such a place that had the minig, he says it's mutter for you. I think most people today don't know, anything about the minhagim that they had in Europe about peanuts anymore. Very few people would know, such a thing, and he'd say, he'd say it's mutter.
I also, Ramesha brings two more things. He brings kimmel, which certainly looks like a seed, and anise, which also looks like a seed. He says there was no gzeira on them, and since there's no gzeira on them, we eat anise and kimmel.
The Ramah says that, gives example of anise. That doesn't have. It's not.
He says you see from there that it's just what they asked they did and what they didn't.
I would add like this. I mean, there was for many years a disagreement, here in the OU between Rebelsky Zatzal and Yibel Chaim, Rosh and other Rabbanim from other Hashkachas about what the status should be with Kinwa. Rebelsky was uncomfortable with it. In fact, it's on the OU website. There's a webcast, a shir given by with both the two Paiskim, sitting side by side, discussing amongst many of the topics was Kinwa, and Rebelsky says he says he would never answer it, but he himself feels that for 8 days one should hold off from eating it for 8 days. So he explains why he's uncertain about it. He goes through the two things. Of course, he starts off with, he discusses the tshuva from Moshe. He thinks that perhaps the tshuva from Moshe might not apply over here because it's more than just it's more than just a peanut, in the sense that peanut is usually not viewed as even though you could make peanut flour and you could do many things that we do with other beans and grains, you could do with peanuts as well, but usually it's eaten more like a nut. It's more like a snack, even though it isn't. But it's which could be why the minig didn't start. But he says corn, everybody is universally accepted as being kidneys, even though it's also a New World grain. But he says if it has a staple grain that has all the characteristics, so then you have to include it, because we know that the Rishonim would have accepted it too. It has every single characteristic that defines a kidneys, then it has to be defined as kidneys as well. When it comes to kinwa, though, he says it doesn't have all of them. You mentioned one of them being, is it grown near other grains? It's not. The places where they grow kinwa are very high in elevation. You can't grow other grains in that area. Wheat and barley, things like that, they don't grow at such high elevations. The only things that grow over there is the kinwa. In terms of, does it resemble a grain? Does it resemble the wheat? It has a different look to it. In terms of,
it looks much more like wheat than mustard does, right?
Okay, right, it's true, but mustard is different.
Than barley, than beans do, for heaven's sakes. Kidney beans.
Okay.
I mean, it looks much more like grain than kidney beans does. Or...
Okay, you're right, but that's not each grain. Then we can talk about the anise also and say, well, that one doesn't look. And there's certain ones they said if it looks like grain, then yes, and if not, by the fennel, by the ketzach, it depends if it looks like grain or if it doesn't look like grain. Some of them they were geyser on, some of them they weren't geyser on. So again, it becomes subjective in a way, but it's not clear. You can't say for sure the Rishonim would have included this in the Gzeira of Kiddias as well. Because it doesn't have all the defining factors. It does have some of them. It is made, like you mentioned, it's made into porridge. You can make a maisa kadeira out of it. You can make bread out of it of a sort. You can make a cracker type foods. So on the one hand, one could say yes, it should be included in kidneys. On the other hand, it doesn't have all the definitions, and therefore you can't say for sure. Just like Ramosha was willing to be mekel for the peanuts because it doesn't. It's not really a grain. Again, we'll explain. It doesn't fit all the characteristics. Rebelsky said if it has all the characteristics, I don't know if everybody agrees with that, but this was Rebelsky's svara. If it has all the characteristics of kidneys, then you have to include it. Then it doesn't matter. It's not up to a minik. Potatoes is a different altogether. It's a root. It's not a grain. It doesn't go through the same process of being of digun, of being threshed, and what are all the different processes that. The quinoa more closely resembles a grain than a potato does. So, but he said if it has all the characteristics, you have to include it. If it doesn't, so then it becomes subjective to an extent. He thought that it's close enough that we should still not use it. That was his own But you listen if people are interested in going to the I think it's the 2014 webcast. It's the very beginning. The first question asked on that webcast is about quinoa, and he says explicitly over there though, I would not forbid it to be eaten. He says I wouldn't eat it, but I would not forbid it. I could hear that there's a room, there's a suffix about it. For many years, the OU did not. They were one of the last holdouts in terms of hashkachas of not giving hashkacha on the quinoa. At some point, when all the other hashkachas were doing it, so the OU changed and decided that they were going to do it. They said, by not doing it, we're making a public statement in a way that we hold that it is kidneys. And
what did our Goyin Reb Hershel Shechta say?
Also, Hershel Shechta thought that it applies to the tshuva of Moshe would apply here too. He has a written tshuva about this, where he actually writes a very interesting thing. He's in the written tshuva, Rebelsky brings up the point that it's a staple grain meaning it's used, like you mentioned, it's used as a flour to make breads and things like that in these South American countries. In fact, there was a time when the quinoa was, I think, considered the primary grain, and then by I forget which original, the Aztecs or whatever it was, the Incas, I don't remember, but to them the quinoa was their primary grain. And then I just read a little history report about it. When the Europeans came, they actually abolished it. They forbade planting it because it had so much part of their culture. They were trying to erase it, and that's why the quinoa sort of became a forgotten grain for many centuries, because they sort of forbade the use of this grain, and then it slowly made a comeback. Already about 40 years ago, people started planting again. 50, and now today it's become a booming business. So Rebelsky said if it's a staple grain, then it should be forbidden, like he argued by the corn. And Schechter wrote back that there's he says that in South America, in those countries where it's grown as a staple grain, one could argue that you should not accept it. You should consider it to be kidneys. But he says in America, it's a novelty item. It's something that we eat on Pesach. Yeah, there are some people who eat it throughout the year as well, but it's really it's not. Most people don't have it in their houses at all throughout the year. It's not a staple grain in America. It's certainly not as popular as rice and other kidneys type corn, and it's something that he says it's a minig, and we don't have to. It doesn't have to be accepted. If the Rabbanim all decide that we're going to give the hechsher on it, that we're going to allow it, then that's the halacha. The halacha is mutter. And he says that seems to be Pok Chazi. All the hechsherim are giving it. It's sold in all the supermarkets today. So then the minig doesn't apply to it. And that which Rebelsky said, it has to apply if it has all the definitions. Rebelsky himself agreed it doesn't have all the definitions. And he says that even though it's a staple grain, so in those countries where they use it so much, where it can get confused, so there you shouldn't use it. But in America, it's not a staple grain over here, and therefore he says it's not a problem.
Thank you very much for your time, Rabbi Gerstien. It's always an honor to have you. Kulta. HaYeshiva.
Thank you. You too. HaYeshiva. Bye.
We have with us Rabbi Goyin, Rabbi Nissan Kaplan. There are numerous, perhaps dozens of shiurim available online. Welcome, Rav Kaplan.
Shalom Aleichem. Welcome. Good morning to all of you.
So, Rabbi Kaplan, many Rabbanim have been speaking about going to hotels for Yom Tif. In fact, there are hotels here in America that are open for the Yom Noraim too, for Rosh Hashanah. What are the issues with going to a hotel for Yom Tif?
So I think we'll have to divide it into several issues. We'll talk if the condition is that the hotel, the kashrus is okay, the food is proper, the program is proper, and the first thing that we have to really bring up is if it's the right thing to go Yom Tif to a hotel, or it's the better thing to stay home. If after we figure that out, we have to really figure out that we choose the right place, the right kashrus, the right atmosphere. But I want really to start with the first point. For sure, it's people that cannot do Yom Tif for several reasons. If it's medical reasons or they don't have someone to help them, one parent family, and they have to go to a hotel. We're not discussing for sure when you can't. It's not a discussion. Our discussion is what is the ideal place to have a yontif. And the real thing is that the most ideal for a family is the Yomim Tovim, the Yomim Neroim, when the family is together, is the time that you build the family. You build the love in between the kids and the parents. All of us, I'll say most of us, grew up. Our parents did not go to hotels. It was not so available in our days. I'm speaking to a little bit to the medium generation. All of us remember the beautiful Purim, the beautiful Mishlach Manos that the mother sends us to give to the neighbor, the stealing the afikaimim from the father, standing in the shul and the Rav before Kol Nidre is crying, before Ne'ilah crying, the shofar in the end is davening. All of us have these beautiful, nice memories. This is a part of the Jewish memory, family connection that a person has. When you go to a hotel, there's a lot of nice things in the hotel. There's a lot of nice programs. But the first thing is, the kid most time loses the family connection. The family connection, when he's with a big dining room, and in the other table he sees that, and the Mizamrim are sitting in the middle. He doesn't have that sitting near his father, getting from his father, למען תספר באוזני בינך ובן בינך את אשר יוצאך ממצרים. We said that we have beautiful schools today, all over the world. Such good mechanchim, such good programs. But then we have the family. למען תספר באוזני בינך ובן בינך. Shabbos, Ato, Bincho, Bitecho. Hashem said the little kids have to not do melacha and Shabbos. They don't understand what is Shabbos. But they were the parents, Leman Yonuach Bincho. A father has a special mitzvah that his son will rest in Shabbos. The Shabbos is the time that the family gets together. The Yom Tov is the time the family gets together. So the first thing is that beauty of Yom Tov that passes from generation to generation, you lose it when you go to the hotel. It's not a terrible thing, but you lose a very good thing that you could give over, even if the hotel has a nice program. The second thing is,
Rabbi Kaplan, let me just interrupt to be myself a little bit. What you're saying is the first mitzvah given to Klal Yisrael, not to the Bezdin, in other words, not to this Kainim or to Bezdin, but given to the individuals of Klal Yisrael, is the concept of v'yikhu ish sel beis avos sel abayis, sitting with your family by the meal.
You're exactly putting to the point, and I want to add. It's the only mitzvah that I will call it a jail. They don't let you to switch houses in the middle of Pesach. Even to visit your uncle, to go to visit Uncle Sam on the other side of the street, or Michael, you're not allowed to. Why? We just want to go for dessert to the neighbors. And the first mitzvah they say, do it family, and please, not to go around. We want a lot of people to eat together, but how much people can already be on one sheep? And they eat it in one place, and they're not allowed to go even out of dessert, because we want them to be focused with the family.
Yeah, and let me be myself, Rav Kaplan, to what you're saying, that I'm in construction, and I remember when I was starting to build buildings, I would sit with the builder, and he would take a 2x4 and show me that he's going up 12 stories. And I would say, how much weight does a 2x4 carry? So he would say, if it's a wood 2x4, 600 pounds. If it's a aluminum 2x4, 1,300 pounds. I said, how is this going to carry a building that weighs 1 million tons? So he said, a single 2x4 could carry 600 pounds. But when it's interwoven, it's nailed to this one and supported by the other one, and it's part of the structure, it could support 1,000 times that amount. And I think that in life, there are so many times we fall down, we hurt ourselves, a child gets, a bully says something to him, and if he's part of the family, It's like the 2x4 that's connected in 1,000 ways and could support 1,000 times its regular strength. And that's the family meal that you're discussing.
Correct. I would add one line. Some people will ask you on that. But a lot of good friends, a lot of people from the program, people from the bungalow county, all these people are also really supporters and friends. And the answer is it's true. But when someone loses his father, his mother, chas v'sholem, something bad happens to a person, sometimes his friends are near him, and sometimes in life the friends left. But the ones that come back is the brothers and sisters. And every different occasion in life, they gather together and they stand there with you. And if that structure is healthy and strong, it supports, like you said, A, B, it gives over the generations our religion. And that is so important.
So are there exceptions? Would you say there are people who should go to a hotel for chef?
Right. Now, for example, sometimes you have a family. I will start from there. That the parents are not getting along at the moment. They're having a little bit issues. And if they'll be home, the yontif will be a disaster for the kids. I will tell them, go to a hotel. Sometimes it's a family that the parents just had an operation. Someone just has to rest. Sometimes, for different reasons, they cannot manage. If it's because, they don't have food to cook, they don't have a house, they don't have how to do it, they don't have the Messiah yet how to do it, these people, for sure, I should ask them to go. Even sometimes people that need sometimes a change, I will not fight it.
Well, thank you very much, Rav HaGoyin, Rav Nissan Kaplan, for your divrei halacha, your divrei hisoirus.
Thank you for this beautiful time together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Kol tov.
We have on the phone with us Rav Nesanel Sommer, who is a Talmud of RJJ. He's a musmach by Reb Mendel Zaks, that's the son-in-law of the Chafetz Chaim, Zechron Livracha. He's been in kashrus for 50 years, in hotels for 18 years. He's a chastan de Beinesiya by Rav Kalman of the Morah Yeshiva. Welcome, Reb Nesanel.
Shalom Aleichem.
So, Reb Nesanel, do you think families should be going to hotels? And what do I mean to say? If you had a choice to go away for Pesach or Sukkot, most people would say, from a kashrus point of view, certainly you should be going away for Sukkot. There's no chametz. And then from a practical point of view, our babis, they used to scrape the walls. They used to be baidik every sefer. They used to, what we saw by our parents and our zaydis in the shmira of the nishmishinzach of Pesach. Like the other extreme of that is a hotel where they come in, they clean the room for a half an hour or 15 minutes. Everybody mishzach. What's your feeling about that as, such a, erudite Talmud Chacham and Ben Torah?
So first of all, I will talk about what's nogei gabi everybody, Ben Torah, Balabas, or whatever it is. I want to first talk about the hashkafa part, and then we'll talk about the halacha kashrus part. Hashkafa part is the following. Pesach is given for one reason, as Reb Shimshon Fulher says, that a person should give over the Masorah for their children. So therefore Pesach is a time for children to be by their parents in order to get the hashkafa of the Torah. The problem is that in a hotel, there's so much going on besides the Seder itself, the atmosphere itself, a lot of things over there are not for any single person. We have modern technology nowadays. The average person comes in, even from the people that want to know where you have Wi-Fi. You have also games and other types of things. Usually what happens is parents are busy because they're vacationing. There's no problem, but they're not vacationing with their children. You'd ask them where their children are. Would you ever send a person away, your child away for 8 days of not knowing where they are? You have no idea. When a person comes into a hotel, they don't check out the person exactly what he is or what he does or everything, and it could create terrible things for the children. Also, got to be modesty, tznius. Every person has a different madrega. Not necessarily do the people over there that go around exactly have the exact same type of dressing that you have. That is what's Negela Gabi Hashkofa. Therefore, the best place in reality really happens to be in a person's house. Now, what's Negela Gabi Kashas?
So slow down, Nesanel.
Yes.
If you think that hashkafically the best place is to be in the house, do you think that why do you compromise yourself by giving hashgacha on hotels for 18 years?
Okay, I will tell you the following. First of all, the first 2 days of Yontif and the last 2 days Yontif, I am not in the hotel. That's first of all. I spend time with my children itself. I don't go on vacation. I'm home. Makes a darn for my children. That's number one. The other thing is, what's Negel Gabi, the Kashas, I find a responsibility at least, and I hope that all the Hashkachas also feel that responsibility, that there are people, I have a caterer that I take care of a whole year. He does also Pesach. So, therefore, I have to at least make sure, with Negel Gabi, the Kashas, as much as possible, the atmosphere itself I cannot be totally pile on, but there's certain things itself in the atmosphere itself that I will not let my caterer do on the Chalamoid, because it's mamish kineged Torah. I'm not going to speak about, I don't want to speak about the halacha, about the mixed seating, whatever it is at the present time. It's not the time to speak about that, but at least I want to, at the time that's not Pesach, I want to be able to set it up in the best way that's possible. And you'll ask me a question, so how can I give a hashkocha on a hotel where I myself are not there? The answer is because until Pesach I am there. I set up the whole system and everything else. And besides that, is also I have a head mashgiach over there that's been with me for about the past 17 years is also, and he oversees everything that should be done correctly, even on the days of Yontif.
So notwithstanding the fact that you think hashgaphically we should not be going to hotels, you're saying you make sure that hashgachically, from a kashrus point of view, it's well done.
That's correct. Now,
so
the other thing is that you mentioned is you see how much our bubbas and zaydas were makbid, even on a mashu of chametz, whatever, in a private house. A person just has to realize that a hotel in which you usually have to hire a goyim to be able to clean. Someone just asked me recently how much money we put on the side just for the goyim cleaning for close to a week's time. Is 15, 18 goyim. How many there are? You talk about $3,000 to $4,000 just for cleaning. But even so, a person has to realize how much you have to clean and how much you have to kasher. In your house, it's a lot smaller. It's just a few rooms, and you're so makbid. So out of that, it's avada better in your house. But if you feel that you can't do the house, or it's too shred for you, whatever, so you're there for go to a hotel. But you have to realize, I believe every person in the kashrus field will agree to what I'm stating, and that is the kashrus in a house is more guaranteed than the kashrus in a hotel.
Let me go back to what you said hashkafically you have a problem with it, and let me try to give the counter argument, okay?
Fine, no problem.
And that would be that, our babas and zaydas, for the most part, were stay-at-home mothers. And that, they prepared the houses for Pesach. Today, many of the mothers, because of the cost of living, are working mothers, right? Even by the B'nai Torah, even more than by the B'nai Torah, they're all working mothers. The women are exhausted. And for them to make Pesach and at the same time support the family is just an impossibility, or it's avodas perach. One woman said to me, she said, there was Yetzias Mitzrayim, but for the wives never left Mitzrayim. So it's true that, yes, in an ideal world, a stay-at-home mom, etc., she wants to give the kids, but, times have changed and the roles of women have changed. I mean, when you're reading by the Ksuba, Eflach, Ve'ezain, a lot of the times it's the women who are equal breadwinners. Is it possible that because times have changed, there is actually a need today for hotels?
Okay. On that question, I will tell you that I just recently, last year, spoke to a Hasidic Rav Hamachshir, And he says, you know something, it's the Pesach cleaning is becoming so difficult by ladies. I think we also have to do something about that and go into hashgacha. So yes, that is correct, that maybe you have to go away to a hotel. A person just has to realize that he's giving up a little bit of stuff. But on the other hand, he has to realize the sakana maybe that he's going into and make the prevention purposes. You're going there not for a vacation, as you put it, to be able to be on your own together with your husband and wife and brother and let your children do wherever they are. It's so important. I'm not going to tell you, Maisim, that children have to be watched, gefällig, in a hotel. So
give me an example. Tell me a Maisa.
Okay, a Maisa, I'll just push it simply. Boys together with girls, okay, that shelo kalocha, they're not going out shidduchim or whatever it is, and you can continue and understand from your own mind such things.
Okay, but is it possible, that's true, that's a sakana, but is it possible, on the other hand, that if the family is in a hotel, somebody's cooking, there's a waiter, so it's a way, if the parents are focused, that they can spend quality time with the children without having the mother running every few minutes to go to the kitchen, to serve, to clean, to this, but you could actually sit around the table and catch up with the kids what maybe you wouldn't be able to do at home.
Right, but you're speaking about now by the Seder. You're talking about 4 days, 6 days, or 8 days that go on.
Of Kalman, of partying, I understand.
Partying, and not even that. He's even on the 4 days of Yontif. There's speeches, maybe the parents go to it, anything else, and the kids just are around behefker. There is no supervision over them. And that's
right.
A very important thing, that if you send your kids away to a hotel, don't send them away, but go together as a family to be together with them. And if you have to, you have to. That I understand that. If it's too hard.
So Rabbi Sommer, are you saying in effect that hotels could have a mila to them, that the parents could spend time with the kids by the starim, etc.? And I would be myself that many of the programs could have wonderful shiurim. Many do. The sakana is that it could be a hilulus between boys and girls, etc. So it's important that parents who go focus on what's positive and try to as much eliminate the negative. Maybe instead of going to shiurim by yourself or leaving your kids, the father can use that time as an opportunity to learn with his kids, where maybe during the year he's too busy. So you're saying it has to be tempered and careful, but it could have a very positive effect as well. Is that fair to say?
Yes, especially for people. I mean, I have questions over here that the lady's almost having a nervous breakdown, which in reality, really, maybe the job is of the Rabbanim to teach ladies exactly what you need for halacha and what you don't need, and make it a little bit easier on them. But that you're not going to change. The minute you get the Yerushalayimwith, what the ladies used to do, that you won't change. So at least, so it is a mila then, going to a place that they are taking care of the kashrus. We're not up to yet the kashrus part.
Okay.
Now the kashrus part, the person has to know the following. If a Rav Hamachshir has never done a Pesach program, and now he's doing a Pesach program for the first time in his life, the Rav Hamachshir, what it is, it's like taking a person, a Rav Hamachshir of a Shlachtois, and telling him, we have a factory over here of cars, we want you to take in charge of it. It's a total different story altogether. And I'm not only
Explain why.
I'm going to explain why. Because the average person thinks, Pesach, the problem is with chametz. And there's no problem with chametz because the caterer orders the stuff, it's all kosher with Pesach. So what could be the problem? Chametz. What more could be a problem on Pesach? A few of the very big problems on Pesach, believe it or not, is not chametz, which it could be a problem. For example, I got a delivery from a caterer, from a wholesaler that's a Shomer Shabbos, and he sells his chametz. I don't know how it's possible, but I got chametz tikka sent to the hotel on Pesach from him. So you have 8 days that you have to check every single product that comes in. It's not like when you do a Shabbos that you check all your products and everything is okay, and that's it. It's 8 days. It's constantly deliveries on Chol Hamoed. Basa b'cholav is a very, very bigger problem, and that is because in a hotel they don't serve 3 meals a day, they serve 6 meals a day, 7 meals a day. I'm not going to go to Charles did an early supper, and then there's a 24-hour thing. There's constantly cooking. You have milchiks and fleishiks being cooked at the same time. If it's a different kitchen, it's one story. If it's the same kitchen, you have a very, very big problem. Also, you have to change over the dining room immediately from one meal to the next meal. You just finished. Now, fleishiks, you have to make sure that there's not milchiks. I mean, you have to make sure now that you're going fleishiks. You have to make sure that the parents bring in baby bottles because they need baby bottles, or they bring in the cream cheese that they had from the morning. All these things, Basa b'cholav gets mixed up. And I want to now say a hatava for caterers, in which you should not have any tiny stir. And people say like this, I pay so much money. Why breakfast do I have to eat on plastic plates? Why can't he at least give us dishes? The answer to that is it's so much easier to control the milchiks and fleishik, at least the dishes and silverware and other stuff, if you have plastic things. The other thing is that a dishwasher, which is very, very difficult to kasher, if you're going to have milchik dishes, you're going to have the milchik dishwasher and fleishik dishwasher. And most hotels only have one dishwasher, so they do milchiks, then they wash it out, then they do fleishiks backwards and forwards, all complicating the things of milchiks and fleishiks. This is just a few of the things that go on in a hotel. Also, you have to realize that you have goyish chametz. Oh, let's say you're feeding the goyim. Where are you feeding the goyim? What are you feeding the goyim? There might be a few guests in the hotel that are not, even though you took over the hotel, there's a few rooms there they must leave over for certain people, VIPs. Where are they eating? Where are they getting their food from? Deliveries happen all the time in the Pesach hotel. The chametz deliveries happen from a whole year. A whole year they know they deliver to the hotel. They deliver also on Pesach. And the other thing you have to know is actually the hashkacha. The hashkacha, is the hashkacha only on the kitchen? Is the hashkacha on the kitchen and dining room and that's it, or is the hashkacha on more than that? Do you make sure that the ladies that clean up the rooms, they don't bring in chametz into in with them to eat lunch? All these things these are just a few of the things that complicate Pesach more than a whole year.
Okay. So, in conclusion, you would say that would you say that it's fair to say that the kashrus in a hotel for Pesach is tricky, but it can be managed?
Right, but the main thing is to get a good Rav Hamachshir and a good person that knows how to kasher, because there's a lot of things. And exactly how the kashrus, you have to make sure you have...
Rabbi Sommer, what do you think of the hechsherim on cruises? Can you give a good hechsher, like, well, you see all these cruise ships...
I'm not, again, as you know, with anybody in kashrus, is not going to give names of things. I will just tell you about cruises. Okay, I got to tell you honestly, I don't know a thing about cruises on Pesach, but I do know about cruises a whole year. And as I mentioned to you, Pesach is even more complicated than a whole year. When you talk about cruises, the problem is you talk about cruises that sometimes have 300, 400, 500, 600 people. You talk about places where, in a hotel at least, a person that you can set up in one room or two rooms, whatever, you have all your stuff that you need throughout the whole Pesach. In a cruise, it's impossible to have it in one room or two rooms. You have it on one floor, another place, in another place, in another place. And a lot of times the kitchens is also two different places. It's so much more complicated on a cruise than it is in a hotel. A cruise is even more schwer. I will not give a hechsher personally on a cruise for a whole year.
So on Pesach you say it's doubly difficult.
Right, we're correct. I don't see how it's possible altogether to do such a thing. I see it's almost impossible a whole year. On Pesach. That's my personal opinion. The person wants to disagree, they can disagree. They did it and they're able to do it. Whatever it is, I had in a hotel, a complicated hotel. I had 32 mashgichim, 3 shifts, because it was so complicated. In a cruise, you'd have to have a tremendous amount of mashgichim all around the place. Wherever a guy can take a place of chametz, you're going to have a problem. But the same thing is on a cruise itself. It's a lot more complicated. When we
Okay.
have kosher, non-kosher, I'll give you an example, like in a hotel. So you'll put one person by the silverware, just standing there in front of the door the whole time that the fair is going on, that they should not take any silverware from the non-kosher thing. Wherever you have in a hotel, if there is a non-kosher, let's say you have downstairs a restaurant which the goyim are eating, you have to have a mashkiach standing there. You tell me, why have mashkiach standing there? Because if this chametz, what's going to happen? The klal is in kashrus. You don't ask what everything is going, what can go wrong. My klal is what can go right. Everything has to be 100% okay in order that there should not be any mistakes.
Yeah.
A mistake that's made in kashrus the whole year, so maybe you can correct it. But on Pesach, it's a lot more difficult.
Well, Rabbi Sommer, thank you very much for sharing your experience with us.
No problem.
Take care. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Also.
We have the honor of having with us on the phone from New York City, Rabbi Avi Juravel. Rabbi Avi is a Talmud of Eastern Parkway, Tells, Denver, Lakewood. He's a musmach of Reb Shnei Kotler, Zechariah Levracha. He's over 30 years been the mashgiach in hotels for Pesach. He's worked for many years. He's 25 years for the OU. He's worked for the OK, for Breuer's, Kaladas Yeshurun, for the Chaf K. So he's seen every part of kashrus. And Rabbi Juravel is giving us this interview. He said, I'm not representing any organization here. I'm just willing to talk about my experience in kashrus, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So this is not a statement as per any organization. It's an honor to have you with us, Rabbi Juravel.
Thank you.
So, Rabbi Juravel, when somebody goes away for Pesach to a hotel, and there must be 50 different hotels you can go to in America, maybe it's 100, I don't know, what should they be aware of? I mean, if they don't want to, compromise the kashrus level they would have at home.
Well, it's interesting. There was just an article published in Mishpacha magazine by Rabbi Fishbane that points out different things that could happen and do happen in hotels that people should be aware of before they make a choice of where to go. He put out an excellent article. I actually responded and added a few things, but people have to know that the halachas don't change between what you do in your house and what you do in the hotel. You should not be putting yourself in a situation where you're partaking in things that you would never do in your own home.
Give us an example of something that you would not do at home that you could be doing in a hotel.
The first example that I can think of is hachana from Yantav Rishon to Yantav Sheni. That's something that nobody prepares for the second Seder on the first day Yantav. It's just non-existent. And in hotels, there are places that run the gamut. They can actually do it full-fledged food preparation in the kitchen. It could be setting up the dining room. It could be all kinds of things like that. But I know in my own home and most people's home, to start the second Seder, you have to wait until we're ready, because you're not allowed to prepare from Yantav Rishon to Yantav Sheni. This year it's worse. This year it's Shabbos. But even Yantav, you can't. Yantav Rishon to Yantav Sheni, you cannot prepare. Period.
So, and even if it's Goyim, it's Amir al-Akum. If the Hachanali de Amir al-Akum is also Asa. So if basically you're saying if you're in a hotel and you see that they're setting the tables and you hear in the kitchen there's clanking, you know there's something wrong with the Hechsha.
You know that they are. There's. I don't know if there's a book, but there's a bunch of rules and a bunch of heterim that various people employ in order to get around this. But it's not something that has to be done. As I said, I've been doing hotels for over 30 years, and we have never started the second Seder later than the time that it was called for. There's ways to do it. You can make sure that whoever's speaking in shul goes overtime that night. You can make sure to have a chazan up there. I remember one year I was in a hotel and Dudu Fisher was there, and he did a 20-minute sfira. That was one of the best things that could have happened to us. We were sitting around in the kitchen with extra time, thanks to a 20-minute sfira.
Give us another example of something you wouldn't do at home that you in a hotel could happen that people should be aware of.
Electronic locks on hotel room doors. It's something that is most hotels today do have electronic locks. That piece of plastic is muksa because it's a klisha malachte le'iser. So there's various ways that the various tour operators get around it. They can either have a security guard on the floor that will open your room for you. Now, some people will take the card and give it to the security guard, and the guard will open it. If they do that, the card is muksa. Or if they want, they can just tell the security guard the room number, and if he believes them, he'll open it with his master key. But that's pure amira la'akum.
There's a way around that, Rabbi Juravel, and that is that if, let's say, you keep a candy bar in your room, and the guy opens the room for you, you say, look, I have something in my room for you. At that point, it wouldn't be amira la'akum, so that would be a solution for that, no?
No, I don't believe it's a solution. I believe that in certain people's minds, it's a solution.
Well, Rabbi Yasha, for one.
Yeah, well, that may be, but you think he's going to take 100 candy bars?
Well, I
really
think that,
believe that? We're talking about a hotel with several hundred rooms.
Well, so
that's an exaggeration. I was once in a situation where they needed water for coffee, and the caterer decided, well, it's Shabbos, I don't have water, what should I do? And so he said he had a big pot, and the guy filled the pot and put it on the stove, and the mashgiach said, what do you think you're doing here? He says, the goyim need to drink coffee. He said, yeah, in a 50-gallon pot? That's how much coffee? There's a shear for Marba V'Shiurim also.
Yeah, but this is not Marba V'Shiurim. This is, I think the guard is going to be very happy to take 50 candy bars home to his house with him.
No, I think that's not being realistic.
Okay, but I'm just telling you, this is halacha psuka from Rabbi Yashiv, and there's another heter in this case where Shlomo Zalman, this isn't necessarily on Pesach, obviously, but his attitude is, I could be mixing up which one paskin. He said that if the hotel owner, which is the ship owner or the hotel owner is usually an akum, he recognizes that he has to have the rooms open for his clients. So he says he's doing it for himself. He's not doing it for you because he believes this is how he has to service his clients.
Yeah, so but it's not true.
Okay,
it's not true. The hotel owner, in this case, has nothing to do with it. The tour operator is the one that's hiring the security guard. The hotel owner, as far as he's concerned, I gave the guest the key. Don't bother me. The hotel owner leases it out to a tour operator. Everything else is on the tour operator.
So you would have to stick with the candy option then. Give us another example of something you wouldn't do at home that in a hotel you may end up doing. Or you may have a kashrus issue that you wouldn't have at home and in a hotel you would.
Well, there's something called parv. Most hotels do not have a place for milchik, fleishik, and parv all together. So there's some hotels that actually stretch the word parv very, very much. And yeah, this is really parv. There's no fleishiks in it. So if someone, for example, would want a piece of gefilte fish at a milchik meal, some hotels don't worry about the fact that it was cooked in a fleishik pot. And some hotels don't worry about some people, when they make gefilte fish, actually add onions to it, and the onion was cut with a fleishik knife. Parv is a very challenging situation in hotels. It can be done. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's something that is stretched sometimes in ways that you would never contemplate doing in your own house.
Now, in a hotel, if they're serving 500 people in the dining room, there are many people who eat in an Agebrux thing who wouldn't know the difference. They will make a brux just unwittingly, or that's their minig. I can't imagine that the hotel puts away kalim when they find gebrux in them. Is that correct?
That is correct as far as the dining room is concerned. As far as the kitchen is concerned, there's no gebrux in the kitchen. There's no way to control gebrux in the dining room. The non-gebruxed hechsher is until the kitchen door. That's it.
So my question to you is, let's say if you come from a Messiah with a very makbid on gebrux, and let's say the extreme would be, let's say, the Hasidim, Chabad, I believe they eat from, they don't even keep the matzah open on the table. They keep it in a pouch, in a matzah zekel. So when they go to a program that's non-gebrux, like let's say KMR is a fabulous, Chabad program, but it's inevitable that what happens on the tables they can't control, or no dining room could control. So would you see this as problematic for somebody who's Nizer on gebrux?
If they want to go that far, again, there's different madregas of how much people are machmer on gebrux. If they want to go that far, then there is no way to control gebrux in the dining room. Most of these non-gebrux programs will put in their booklet and put in their instructions, anyone that wants gebrux should request a disposable plate and cutlery to use. However, it's very few and far between people that request it, and it's uncontrollable in a dining room situation.
Okay. Could you think of other Pesach-specific issues from either a gebrux point of view, other chumrah point of view, that you end up in a hotel compromising that you wouldn't have at home?
There's people that don't realize. They come to a hotel and they say, okay, let me ask the front desk for this or this or this. And many times what they're requesting is outright Amir La'akum. Amir La'akum is not something that should be trifled with. I myself posed the question to Rabbi Yashiv about using hot water from an urn on Shabbos because the urn has an automatic refill. So every time you take out water, then new water is going in. And the question is, if in a hotel situation, if you can have the goyim take from there, and the heter is very simple. It's mafurish, a Magen Avram, that there's no amir la'akam on a psik reisha. So you're not telling the goy to refill the urn. You're just telling him to take water and serve coffee. So it should fit into the Magen Avram situation. The letter that I received back from Rabbi Yashiv said that the Magen Avram says it's mutter, and we're not going to overrule the Magen Avram, but the whole inyan of Amir La'akum in hotels is so bad that he would not be matter this either. Yeah.
Well, here you have another problem besides the Magen Avram. You have, even though there's it's the Maimon Mordechai, many other poskim say there's no Amir La'akum by Psik Reisha, but here you have a din of Maisa Shabbos, because if it's being nespashal specifically for a Yid, even without Amir La'akum would be problematic. So an urn in a hotel could have problems besides Amir La'akum. Just let me ask you a question. How do you deal with, you have people come in to any hotel, and you have people that they're either not religious, extended mishpachas come, and you have, Freya people come. It's the father-in-law, it's the mother-in-law, there's cousins, and somebody, what's to stop somebody who's an Amoritz? You have people in Amoritz, they bring something to the table, they have a coffee with a biscuit, it ends up in the kalim. Like, how do you control something like that?
You mean they're bringing in outside food?
Yeah, they're bringing outside food. It's if I grew up, chveis von garnished. I know I'm supposed to eat matzah on Pesach. I'm invited by my
my newly married daughter to come. I'm an uncle. I grew up in Australia. I come. I'm so happy. I know they sing, and I like to have a biscuit. So they're very. So I bring it in. I have it with my coffee, a biscuit. I'm eating on a Pesach. Take a plate. I mean, what's to prevent that from happening?
To say it can be prevented 100%, I don't know how to prevent it 100%. It is something that the mashgichim are watching for. It is something that when people check in, they're told that we supply everything, no outside food. But it's something that the mashgichim have to watch. And mashgichim have to be familiar with what the food in the hotel looks like and what's available and what's not. If they see a biscuit that did not come from the kitchen, they should be able to recognize it. There are mashgichim constantly on duty checking both the kitchens and the dining rooms.
Now, they also allow kalim to be brought up to the rooms, right?
No.
So there's no kalim brought up to a room in a hotel? I mean, I've been to a hotel and I brought kalim up to the room. I could be honest with you.
Well, you asked if they allow it. You asked if they allow it. Officially, they don't allow it. They tell people no. But generally, if kalim go up to the room, those kalim are disposed of, and the silverware is put away till after Pesach and rekashered.
Uh-huh. Now, so let's talk about bedikas chametz. How do they do bedikas chametz? In other words, most people clean the house. There's rooms that are taped up 2 weeks in advance. They're vacuumed. They're this, they're that. If you're renting a hotel for Pesach, they can't have rooms cordoned off a week before. There's no mother with a careful eye. How do they do bedika?
The truth is that a room that was cleaned out by a hotel is, I'm not sure that it even needs bedika if you walk in. However, what we do is we have a staff going around after Shkia on the night of bedikas chametz, actually going through every room. I don't say that they're spending an hour in each room checking, but the rooms are empty then, and there's not much to look at. We have every room is checked by us.
People don't eat in their hotel rooms. There's room service to most rooms. How could you say it's a makom shemachnisim by chametz?
After it's cleaned.
I understand. So
after the cleaning, it's a makom shemachnisim by. After the daily cleaning, it's together that.
Well, so I'm saying, it is a makom shemachnisim by. It becomes a makom shemachnisim by after it's clean. So we're lowering the standard of cleaning for Pesach to 15 minutes a room, which would be a tremendous simcha to all the housewives listening to this.
Yeah, but all the housewives know what their own houses are. Their own houses have food and things all over the place, which is not the case in hotel rooms generally. And there are rooms that will take the cleaning crew much longer, depending on who was in it and what they did. If you had a couple there with 6 kids crammed into one room, they will not do it in 15 minutes.
I'll tell you a story that happened with me. We used to go years ago to hotels. I went to a hotel for Pesach. I asked them for salt. So he brought me a salt shaker, and it had rice in it. So I called over to Mashgiach. I said, why is there rice in the salt shaker? So the Mashgiach looks at me. He says, oh, this must be from the not Pesach thicker rice shakers that the hotel brought.
I'm glad the Mashgiach recognized it. You had another problem, a burger over there also.
Yeah. Well, according to some Paiskim. Okay, do they use the same dishwashers that for the whole year? What dishwashers do they use in these programs?
Most programs will kasher the hotel dishwasher. They'll have one for milchik. I have one for milchik and one for fleishik.
Now, how do you kasher a dishwasher which has many rubber parts to it?
You take it apart.
But what do you do with the rubber? You have rubber, all those things, all the racks are rubber, etc. You can take it apart. How do you kasher it?
We have, they're not rubber, they're plastic.
Plastic. How do you kasher the plastic?
It will be rubber, it will be simple, because rubber is kli eitz, and that's for sure you can do hagala on. If it's plastic, there are people that are matir being doing hagala on plastic.
So the saimachan, these are the kashitas of using hagala on plastic. I don't imagine many people do hagala on plastic at home. Is that fair to say?
No, I don't think that's fair to say. There are people that do all kinds of machinery that could have some plastic parts. The dishwashers that we use are, I would say that they're almost completely stainless steel. The curtains that are in the dishwasher we replace for Pesach.
Yeah,
Whatever
but
we could replace.
the racks in the dishwasher are always plastic, or they would chip the plates.
We have our own racks.
So you bring in your own racks, and you're not saimach on kashering plastic.
No, the racks are a problem to kasher because the racks have holes in it. Anything with small holes, the Ramah says Hagala is not enough, and you would need Liban Kal. You're not going to do that on plastic.
Is it when you give a hechsher, Rabbi Juravel, is it a hechsher on the food or is it a hechsher on the hotel?
When I give, I'm the Morah Asher, and it's on the hotel, meaning that it's on the Erev, it's on the mechitza around the swimming pool, it's around the entertainment. Everything.
So if there was Koil Isha, you wouldn't give a hechsher?
Absolutely not. There are places that have mixed swimming. There are places where whoever does the Erev is relying on someone that put it up 7 years ago and just restringing it without really knowing Hilchus Erevin, without knowing what to check and how to check. We had a situation once where they put an Erev around the complex, and there was a building there which actually housed some of the employees. And after the Erev was up, they found out the building no longer belonged to the hotel. They sold it off. So that Erev was invalid. It was put up properly 20 years before, but situations change.
Right after Pesach, the hotels often like to serve pizza or something like after Havdalah. How do they get the chametz so quickly?
I can only speak for the hotel where I'm in, and what we do is we have it frozen before Pesach, and it is buried deep in the freezer, sealed with many, many chosamas. And after Havdalah, we dig it out, and we use an oven to heat it up.
Now,
I sell that chametz.
Rabbi Juravel, can you share with us any other story of an interesting story of being a mashkiach of Pesach, or something you may have heard about hechsher on Pesach? You must have a favorite Pesach hechsher story.
There was one hotel where they decided that instead of having a Shabbos elevator, they'll have an elevator operator instead. And the official story that they told the mashgiach was this elevator operator is going to be going up and down all day long, stopping at every floor, whether you ask him or not. The realistic story is when the person got into the elevator, the operator asked what floor. So you had outright Amir La'akum there.
Right. Give us one more. Leave us with one more story.
One more story.
What's your favorite Pesach story? Because certainly there are many mashgichim who don't know what they're doing, or there are some who don't know what they're doing, or a miyut, or a miyuta de miyuta, and you must have heard some story that you just grabbed your head and you said, how did they do that?
No, I know how they do that, but not you. There are times when there are places where mashgichim are literally abused. I remember one tour operator that did a job in Florida, and when it came to mashgichim, he said, let them take a bus from New York. They're no different than my dishwashers. Let them travel by Greyhound. I don't pay airline tickets. They put them into subhuman rooms. They have to eat with the help. They're treated inhumanely, and you get what you pay for.
So that's a very interesting line of questioning. When somebody takes you, they obviously know they're getting somebody who's, they're not going to push around, who's a mumche in halacha, who's giving a hechsher not only on the food, but on the mechitza, on the swimming pool, on the entertainment, etc. But there are many tour operators who see the mashkiach, not as an asset, but as a liability, like a verfrumte Drake-up I have to deal with, and these operators just treat them that way, and also they run circles around them whenever they can. What Mechsholim could you end up with where you have a tour operator who's less than a complete Yerushalayim?
You can have the tour operator will decide that he's having a midnight buffet and forget to inform the mashgiach. He can have a milchika one, an ice cream party, a fleishika one. It's in this part of the hotel. It's in the theater where they're making their shows. The mashgiach may not even know about it because they're not working hand in hand.
And what could happen then? Because the kitchen is kosher, so what could happen?
Milchiks and fleishiks will invariably get mixed up. I've been in situations where I actually saw in one refrigerator milchik and fleishik. I saw pans that were marked, different colors, and I asked the mashgiach, "What's this?" He said, "It's cold. What do I care?" You have to be able to separate things, and you have to be able. It's not your own house. You have workers, and you can't assume that they're going to be familiar with the rules of kashrus like you are. So you have to have gedarim. If you break these gedarim, you're invariably going to have issues.
And do you know of operators who are disinterested in the mashgichim and in the kashrus that have caused mechsholim?
Yes.
Well, give me an example.
I'll give you an example. I know operators that decided that they want to have a chametzdika reception the night of Bedikas Chametz. And so that you're invariably going to have chametz tracked all over the hotel, even if the reception is in one place. If it's in one place, who's going to stop them from taking the hamburger roll into the hotel, into the lobby, into the different places? You can have a security guard. Security guards are not made to inhibit the guest's activities. The guest is the king over there. No one's going to tell a guest what to do and where to do. So there have to be gedarim when you can have chametz there and when not. And to have chametz to have a major chametzdika party the night the bedikas chametz is asking for trouble. I refused the job because of that one year. Someone wanted me to do a hotel, and that issue came up, and I said no, and we parted company. Baruch Hashem, it was 3 months before Pesach, so he found his rabbi, and I went my way.
No, how important is this? Somebody told me they were on a Pesach program. The oldest mashgiach was 23-year-old yeshiva bacher who knew a crank. Like, how important is it? At what point should people attending a program look around and say, "Uh-oh, I'm in trouble"? What? Give us some guidelines to say, is the hotel being well run for Pesach? It is too late because you're there already. But what should people be on the lookout for?
Well, the first thing is very simple. Go into the dining room the first afternoon of Yantif and see if it's set up for the Seder. See what's going. You can see that. If the tables are all set for the Seder, you know that they're playing games. As you said before, listen and see if they're working in the kitchen. See if they're setting up Seder plates.
How important is it that the tour operator be a Yerei Shamayim?
It's very important. If there's a partnership between the tour operator and the hashgacha that they both want it done right, then there's a very good chance of success in getting the program done properly. If the tour operator doesn't care, if it's an adversarial relationship from day one, then there's going to be issues.
Rabbi Juravel, thank you very much for educating us on going to a hotel for Pesach.
You're welcome.
Kulta, bye-bye. How was Mordechai allowed to be Masakin all of Klal Yisrael? Imagine if you had Hitler is around the corner and some guy says, "I'm going to stand in front of Hitler with a big sign that says, 'You sold yourself to me as an Eved.' You would call the person a Roidif. How was he allowed to do it? And be'emes, we said, the Gemara in Megillah, it's either on Daf Yud Beis or Yud Gimel, I don't remember exactly. The Gemara says that Knesset Yisrael had a taina to Mordechai why he did it. The Medrash has a taina. The Medrash says Mordechai was not mitzapes asher Yaakov Avinu was waited for the right time, and we'll show the Morah on the page. But Mordechai didn't, and it was a tayus of Mordechai. How was he allowed to do it? So it's interesting. The first one to ask this question is the Even Ezra. And Even Ezra gives an answer in Okimti. He says Mordechai had no choice. He had to stay B'Shar HaMelech. Since he had to stay B'Shar HaMelech, once he was B'Shar HaMelech and he had a Tzela, Mordechai held the halach, he wasn't allowed to be bow because it was Yareg Val Yaver. Since it was Yareg Val Yaver, he had no choice, and therefore it was Mesakin Klal Yisrael. So it was sort of Belez Breira because he had to be there. It's an Okimta that he had to be there. It's also a question whether it was Yareg Val Yaver. It's a Choikis both in the Gemara, whether the Tzela, Mishtachtel, Tzela, Zikaradin. But that's the Even Ezra's answer. The Nesivis asked the question, and the Nesivis says it was a kemat achet of Mordechai. He's masking with the Gemara. And he says, why was Mordechai allowed to do it? He says it must be, he brings the Ramban and Eiv, that when a tzaddik gomer does an avera, it must be that his bechira was taken away from him. Really a startling Nesivis. The Radvaz says similar thing, that not that his bechira was taken away, but that Mordechai had to be B'Shar HaMelech. They all struggle with this question. The Maral goes in the other extreme. The Maral says that Mordechai had a right to be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim, and even though he was Mesakin Klal Yisrael, he says the Gemara in Brachas says it's mitzvah, it's mutta legaris b'rishayim. The Gemara, I think, on Sandav Zion. And the Gemara brings a few terutzim, but one of the terutzim is that a tzaddik gomer is allowed to be megar b'rishayim. So he holds Binyamin was a tzaddik gomer, and he was allowed to make a macha neged rishayim, even though Maral says it was Mesakin Klal Yisrael, all the way the other extreme. The Nesiva says it was a chait. The Even Ezra says he had no choice. Radvaz says he has no choice. He says no. Chassam Sofer says a very beautiful teretz. Chassam Sofer says that of course you're not allowed to be Mesakin Klal Yisrael. He says, but Mordechai was part of the Sanhedrin that he was chaverim with Hananiah, Mishael, Vazariah. Hananiah, Mishael, Vazariah, they didn't want to be mishtachel l'tzelem, so they were nichnas into the Tanner. Mordechai and the rest of the Sanhedrin ran away. So he said Mordechai, his whole life, was grieving. Like Rabbi Akiva says, Masai avay apasik azeli liyadi v'kaimena. He had the opportunity and he ran away from it. So he wanted to do tshuva. So his goal, he said, was to incite Haman to kill him, to be mechaper on the chay, what he considered a chait, that he didn't dial Kiddush Hashem. His Mordechai never imagined that Haman would kill the rest of Klal Yisrael. So he says, Hananiah, Mishael, Vazariah, they didn't bow down to Nebuchadnezzar, and he didn't kill the rest of Klal Yisrael. Why should Haman be different? So he says, really, it was an accident of Mordechai's, but Avadi had no right to do it. So you have the entire, all the way from the Nesivis who says it was a chait, all these others who say that it was a mistake or it was a miscalculation, all the way to the Maral who says he had a right to do it. And why is this somewhat relevant? I'll put the Morah on it somewhat relevant. Let's say somebody wants to run up to the Harabayas. You have these people to show that they own it. So the Pashtus, we had on a long time ago, the Ravid, he said he didn't want to say they're a Raidif, but he said it's curved to it. Maybe according to the Maral, if a Tzaddik Garmer would do it, it would be Mutta. So these are very relevant shilos living on the other side of the green line, marching in front of the UN carrying signs. According to the great body of both Rishonim that we mentioned, as well as the great Achrayim, it would be Asa. Could be that according to the Maral, if somebody's a Tzaddik Gomer, go figure out who a Tzaddik Gomer is, it would be permissible. That's the answer, and the reason I said it over because I think it was an important question. None of the answers really hit upon this, so I thought I would answer it myself. So I guess I'll get the reward of the Sfarim. Kol Tov, I look forward to next week again. This is David Lichtenstein for the Yeshiva Shel Maila.
He